My name's Kirstie I have cystic fibrosis, and in 2011 I had my first double lung transplant after being on life support. In 2013 I went through chronic rejection and desperately needed a second double lung transplant.
When Kirstie was first born, they knew that something was wrong with her because she had a big tummy. And after tests they found that she needed to have an operation at Great Ormond Street, and they later discovered that what was present was that she could possibly have cystic fibrosis.
There's nothing, one specific thing I love about POL. It's the whole combination of things, the things it can become, the thing, whatever you want it to be. I mean, there's obviously this negative connotation of lap dancing, sexiness, but hey, if you want to throw out a bit of sex appeal in a routine, you can use that. Okay, so this is my weekly meds. So I have to take them daily. We've got my Prograf, which is my anti-rejection medication. I take 7 milligrams of that, so like 3 tablets. Got my steroids, which is also part of my rejection meds. So like I take 10 milligrams of that, which is actually like a really low dose. They can make you like a face blow up. And we call it moon face. So that's a lovely medication. I also have citalopram, which for people who don't know, it's an antidepressant. And I take that because my life with CF and with transplant, it's not like I have one major life event every 10 years. I have major life events on a regular basis, and they include friends dying. And on the 28th of December, a very close friend of mine passed away, and that was really hard for me to deal with. I don't have a lot of friends, but the ones I do have are really special. So my first transplant, I had to learn to walk and talk again, and for some reason, although I had to learn to walk and talk, I still thought I could walk up to a pole and go upside down. And when I actually first even grabbed hold of a pole and went to lift myself, the realisation that I was so weak and that actually it was going to take me so long, it was kind of like really deflating. But at the same time I was like, okay, this is fine, this is another hurdle, we'll just have to see how long it takes. And only 2 weeks later I was able to lift my feet off the floor. There's a lot of my medications, there's a few other things. I have my iNeb, which is my neb that I do. And yeah, I just haven't opened this in a while, you can tell. Put the medication in there, in that little bit, and then I switch it on, and basically I have to breathe it in, and that's an antibiotic to stop my lungs getting infected. I have to do that twice a day, and I have to do my lung function every day as well. It's part of my treatment, and that to see if I am rejecting my lungs or if I've got an infection, because it's not always clear. You know, you can feel quite normal and drop 10% of lung function. So I turn it on and it comes up with that man telling me to blow into it. I take a big breath and blow into it as fast as I can, and what it's going to measure is how fast I can blow that breath out, and it's telling me not bad. So 3.42 litres of lung capacity in my first second. I kind of average between that and 3.6. The sheer breathlessness was my main concern. Just not being able to do too many moves in a row, and worrying that, you know, you're kind of running out of oxygen and you're running out of breath. With CF, it's not just about my lungs, it's about my digestive system. So I, come into lesson with chronic abdomen pain and still be like, okay, I've got to get up and do a new move today. I've got to do this or do that. And it's just kind of, I wanted to push myself, I wanted to achieve something. And every time you go to a lesson, you kind of list on your hand the problems you've got that day, and then list, okay, now I need to equal that amount of problems with the amount of good things to combat it. The more problems I had, the more I wanted to do. I didn't have a big support network. I had a close support network. I had my mum, my nan, my husband, and they were kind of everything really. I had a lot of people who were following my story, offering support and things, but it really comes down to your family that pull you through and give you that will to survive.
Initially my first thoughts were she would never get married and have children, and you'd be planning for a funeral rather than a wedding. That was my first initial thoughts as a mother.
3 days before the wedding, my carers came in and I couldn't get off my BiPAP machine, which I would be on overnight, and I couldn't breathe, and I knew if I took it off then that would be it. And then when my mum arrived and things were escalating, I couldn't breathe with it on, my heart rate was going really high, and I just thought I was going to die. And a moment of panic, kind of feeling claustrophobic with this huge mask over your nose, pushing up on your eyes. And I just took it off and gave up. And it was that point that when I started to relax, I could breathe again, and I put it back on. I couldn't sit up, I couldn't lay down, I couldn't do anything. It was just kind of this restfulness that if I laid down then I'd die, and I don't know, it was horrific. I got married. I walked down the aisle because I wasn't going to be wheeled, and although things were a struggle, it was still like the most perfect day ever. And when you think back now, you can remember it without all that, or you can remember it with, and it's kind of like I choose to just remember the niceness of it and the other feelings.
It was very unorthodox the way she came in.
A little bit.
A little bit.
You were too busy getting drunk.
I was at the bar, to be honest. I had her around the golf club at the bar. She came in like with nurses and a doctor that were there all day. They were on standby all day. They're everywhere. We had a plan laid out for the day. If Kirstie claps walking down the aisle, if Kirstie claps to the altar, Kirstie claps while at the meal, everything was planned and ready. We planned to have the wedding in the hospital, cancel it completely. So it was a very surreal day.
Plan for me to survive.
No, that wasn't part of the plan. Getting through it wasn't on the plan, I don't think.
I call upon these persons here present to witness that I, Kirstie Mills, do take thee, Stuart Carl Tancock, to be my lawful wedded husband.
I was rushed into hospital after my wedding, and they gave me the option to stay at Exeter and spend the last couple of days with my family, be airlifted to Harefield to go on life support. And the initial thought wasn't for me, it was for Stuart and for my mum that I was doing it. How could I get married and then just leave the man of my dreams without actually putting up a fight? That was kind of my thought. I had to do it for them, if nothing else.
And we always knew the lay of the land from the start. Kirstie always said from day one, this is what I have, this is what can happen, this is my timescale. And everything went even quicker than that. So it was tough, but we always believed and we always said that's what would happen. I always knew Kirstie was going to get the first transplant. I always said it from day one. As soon as she got put on the list, I said, you'll get this chance. She was like, no. But we always said that's what would happen.
I'd only just got into Harefield Hospital, and it was the night time, everyone had gone home, and I remember the the transplant coordinator coming in and saying that they possibly had lungs, and I was trying to ring Stuart to get hold of him, but he was getting drunk.
Oh,
Yeah, you were.
yeah, right, you got hold of me straight away.
I couldn't get hold of you straight away.
I ran all the way there.
I couldn't get hold of you straight away.
I was at the cricket club around the corner.
I couldn't get hold of you straight away.
That's Mel's fault.
And so yeah, you ran to the hospital, and Mum turned up. It was just a waiting game really, because we didn't know whether at that point the donor lungs were suitable. And it was something about 8 o'clock at night, and we had to wait till 1 in the morning to find out whether it was a go. And then 1 went to 2, and I know I'd just sort of given up hope at that point and went to sleep really, didn't I?
You just told everybody to leave,
Yeah,
and we all left.
yeah. And they came in and said that there wasn't a go.
Mm.
Someone else got the lungs, they were too big for me.
Yes, another CF patient.
Yeah. My mum spent the morning with me, and my doctor came in early, and remembering sort of crouching down, and I just said the words I could manage to get out, which was, "Help me, I can't do this." And he was in tears at that point, and he was really upset, and he knew that they had to take me off the transplant list at that point. I'd become too ill. They came up with another option that would be to put me on ECMO. It was an experiment as a bridge to transplant, a way of keeping me alive whilst waiting for a set of lungs to come available.
But they did come through, and I got the message, and I told Stuart, and so we rushed back to the hospital. Then we had the waiting game for the whole evening and that night to find out if they were, it was going to go ahead.
I waited 5 days on ECMO, and what was my last day, a set of lungs became available, and I went down to theatre.
Well, I was the one who went in and told her she'd had the transplant, and I expected a smile, and I didn't. She looked devastated, as she said, because she didn't feel well enough. It was only as weeks went by that we started to see the improvements.
I still never thought I was going to get through, even when I was walking with a Zimmer frame down the hospital floor. I didn't feel like I was getting stronger, I just felt like I was stuck, and it was so hard. But like I say, when I went out that hospital door, it was like, okay, this is it, everything's going to be okay, and going to go back to doing everything I love and enjoying life. But yeah, it was really hard.
The first time was so much harder for her because she was in a coma. She woke up with a different set of lungs in her. She didn't know what happened over the last 5 days. It was all bits and blurry, so it was a tough ride. But we always knew once she had the tools, she could do the job, and that's what she's done so far, and that's what she continues to do.
My second transplant, me and Stuart hadn't had a proper honeymoon, and being nearly 2 years post-transplant, we decided to go to Gran Canaria. And while we were there, we did a lot of walking, a lot of physical activity. We're not really kind of people to sit around and do nothing. And I just kind of noted that it was really hard. And it was only 6 months since I'd done my cycle, and suddenly I was hugely breathless, and my lung function was 36%. Transplant criteria is 30%, so I was on that edge of what they would call retransplant. I got told 1 transplant, that's it. I got admitted straight away and had another biopsy, I think the Friday, the day after, and I woke up really struggling to breathe, but I wasn't just on 4 or 2 litres, I was on 10, which is considered as high flow oxygen. And I remember I sat straight up straight away and coughed, and lots of blood came up, but then I just couldn't breathe. And the nurse said, well, you're used to bronchs, why is this so bad? And I was just thinking, something's wrong, you've done something's wrong, it's not right. And I kind of knew what had happened, but you don't want to say because you don't want to seem like you're making a fuss when it could be nothing. But I thought, well, that my lungs collapsed. They came back on the Wednesday before, and Nonny walked into the room with the psychologist, Mel, and she sat on the end of my bed, and my husband was there and my mum was there, and she started crying. And I just reached out my hand and said, it's okay, you can tell me. And she said, you can't have another transplant. And I was like, okay. And she said, you've got a week, maybe 2 weeks left. It was the worst day of my life. On the Friday night, I think we were watching something on TV or a DVD, and the transplant coordinator came into the room, and he was grinning like a Cheshire cat, and Stuart thought he was there for some sort of social call. And I kind of just looked at him and thought, no, can't be. And he said, we've got lungs. The doctors came in at about 8:30 and told me to get a shower and get ready because I was going down for my transplant.
You just always had to hope, really. It's weird on you're the other side of the bed, so you can't control anything. You have to just watch. It took its time the first time round, and the second time it was so much quicker. It was the next day she was sat up and aware and buzzing, and she was high as a kite as well on the drugs, but it was a very exciting time for her the second time because she knew about it.
3 weeks later, I was walking out of the hospital and on the journey to regaining my life.
She's achieved, I think, with her charity work, caring for others, the fact that she's had the strength to do what she's done, the fact that she had the strength to get through the first and second transplant. Oh, there's just endless things. I mean, she's done us proud in everything, really, and continues to.
When I started out with Live Life, Give Life, I was an ambassador, and that's someone pre-transplant who is going out there, sharing their story, getting people to sign up, and we use their stories to highlight how horrific it is to wait on the transplant list. Live Life, Give Life is a charity that supports organ donation, and it supports those who are waiting for transplant. We campaign to make people aware of organ donation, to dispel the myths, and to get people to sign up. So I'm here selling transplant treatment calendars, which is an aid of Live Life, Give Life charity that I'm a trustee for. The calendar is comprised of 13 transplant recipients and people waiting for transplants. Every page of the calendar has who it is in the calendar. There's a lot of lung patients just because of people who organised it. There was 3 of us with cystic fibrosis and 1 who received a single lung transplant. So the people we kind of knew were lung transplant patients. We've got Andrew, who is still waiting for a double lung transplant, and unfortunately we have Lou, who was 2 years post, and she passed away earlier this year. You know, all these people in the calendar are friends I've known and talked to, so it's really hard when you're kind of doing these sort of things, knowing that any of one of these might not be around for much longer. So I've done a lot of charity work over probably since I was 16. That's when I started doing charity work. I did a skydive, raised quite a bit of money for that, so I was pretty proud. I think I raised £2,000. I've done my charity bike ride. I've done my ball. I've done a lot of little things as well, just like cake stalls and stuff. I think I've raised nearly £20,000. We've
had a bumpy ride, but we've got there in the end. It's been ups and downs. We've had couple of dilemmas here and there, and going back to London and back to London, and it's all part of the ride, it's all part of the journey.
Every new turn shows something up, and I know my need to fight isn't over. I still have cystic fibrosis. I still face getting chronic rejection at some point in the future. I understand that inspiration can mean from the smallest of things, but when you're an inspiration to people, they hold you up on a mantle, and you shouldn't be capable of flaws but I'm just a person. I let people into my life to inspire them, but not because I'm an amazing person or anything that people want to hold me up, just because I'm a normal person and I did things that other people can do. Every day is a day I didn't have. Every day is a day I cherish. Every day I think, what can I do with this day to make it worth me being here? I guess I'm on a journey of self-improvement and discovery, and I want to see how far I can get. And I've seen how far I've got so far, and I guess I want to see how far I can continue. It's just doing the improbable. Nothing's impossible.